We will now resume the special meeting for Lakeport County Council, today, May 14th, 2020. With that, let me see, are you joining us by Zoom? Great, can you hear us?
They should be able to hear us every time. Because you would like to hear yourself. Hey, Jeff, I think you're muted.
Oh, no, I can hear you now. I couldn't hear anything until you just spoke. Everything was just sort of mumbles in the background.
Okay, all we did was resume the meeting from the previous meeting of Reconvened. So I think we are going to begin today with just hearing from you and Steve. We're not in any particular place on the agenda. We're sort of in the middle of discussion. So if you want to just start with what you have, the information, then we'll go from there.
Okay, so we've gotten obviously some additional information since we spoke last, and we had some information leaving that last meeting to work on. So basically, I think we got three things we want to talk about today. One is looking at the water and sewer fund with some revisions based upon information we received from Sam, with some salary movement and discussing kind of different rate increases depending on what you're doing within that fund and when subsequent phases are occurring with the sewer projects. The other thing we want to talk about is the general fund and the information that we have, and in particular, some discrepancies in the information we have with the budget information. Especially then with it looks like some moving of some of the costs and expenditures from water and sewer to general fund. And then we also want to talk about where the rates are now for Lake Lure in comparison to other communities in the state and the potential impact of increases and where that would have you stand with other communities in the state. So let me start with talking about, and let me ask if you have the information that we sent this morning, the most recent copies of the spreadsheets for the general fund and the water and sewer, and if you have information regarding the rates. Did you receive that this morning, and does the council have copies or access to some of that information?
We do have copies.
Okay.
Is North Carolina residential drinking water, is that include sewer or is it just water?
So I'm not sure what got printed. There's actually like 6 different sheets within that workbook that includes all of the data and some plots.
Yeah, Michelle's going to print off the North Carolina residential wastewater section.
Yeah, so the most important sheets out of that, if we can only look at a couple of them, is probably the drinking water sorted in the drinking water plot and the wastewater sorted in the wastewater plot, those 4 sheets. Now, there's a huge amount of data there, so whether you want to print all of that, I don't know. You're talking 400 or 500 different utilities represented with data, so they're pretty big spreadsheets. The plots may be enough to kind of summarize if I talk about where you're at. So let me start, I guess, with talking about the water and sewer fund, our understanding of kind of the changes that you're looking to potentially do and what we've reflected in this sheet. So the information we received from Sam indicated that salaries and benefits from the water and wastewater fund were being moved to the general fund. We'll talk about those numbers in a minute, and I think that that's reflected appropriately in what you see as Table 3, the update. A couple of comments about that. One is if those are shared salaries administrative positions that are doing work for water and sewer and for other things, I think that's probably fine. If these are just water and sewer positions, then while I am certainly not a CPA or maybe more importantly, I'm not an auditor and I'm not the LGC, they may, and I think likely will view if you're paying for salaries that are purely water and sewer out of the general fund, it's the same difference as a transfer. So that's something I'm going to warn you about as something you need to be very careful of what those salaries are, what they're doing, and making sure they're accounted for in the correct fund. It's not as simple as just necessarily moving them from one to another. So I would urge you to kind of take that in consideration. That may be something you want to talk to your auditor about. You may want to talk to LGC about before you go forward with moving those positions from a funding standpoint. However, in light of that, if you were to move that, the necessary rate increase would be 30% instead of the previously discussed 40%. Now, in addition, if you were to move phase 2 of the sewer work from 2024 out to 2027, which is when you have some debt, the first debt coming off of the water and sewer fund will happen in year 2027, then you could change your rate increase to 20% instead of 30%. I will also say, however, that the rate increase for this year is predicated on 3.5% rate increases annually from that point forward. So if you don't want to do annual rate increases going forward, you would need to have a larger increase now, and there would need to be larger block increases every 3, 4, 5 years, whatever the period in between increases you would want to use. So all of that impacts.
I want to interject something right quick before this. When you raise rates, you use the same heat. If you're raising rates every year, you're probably going to take heat every year. Heat is heat. Sometimes it's better to raise them every 4 years or every 8 years, or raise them enough and stay that rate to keep you where you need to be, but you take the beating less frequently if you have bigger jumps than you do. So just something to consider.
Yeah, and I say there's pros and cons. Typically, we recommend doing the annual increases because it smooths out the impacts from a conservation standard. If you have huge increases, it kicks into people conserving and reducing income as a result. So it's harder to track rate increases with revenue increases. However, what I'll say is, given the way you do your rates and that basically they're for the most part, they're fixed rates. They're not based upon usage. Your revenue increases should track pretty closely to your rate increases. I think the only potential concern is if you have people there that are only there part of the year, if the increases are enough, they may want to cut off service and reconnect in between seasons, but that's something you can also kind of handle with reconnect fees and policies. But like I said, those decisions affect one another. So while we're talking about a 1-year budget, the 10-year financial plan is very sensitive to making moves and its impacts later. And in particular, the earlier in the process you make a change, the more impact it has further down the line. So if you do lower rate increases now, it kind of multiplies out over years of income. So if you do lower rate increases now, it has much more substantial impacts later versus if you have higher now and you make this, some different changes later in the process, just kind of understanding how the sensitivity of the model works. But basically, kind of depending on what you want to do, if you keep everything in the fund, you keep all the salaries there, you do everything as proposed in the existing CIP that we did. It was the 40% we showed you before. If you move the salaries out, it's 30%. Same thing I'll say is if you keep the salaries in and you move phase 2 to 2027, it's also 30%. If you do both, it gets you down to a 20% increase right now. If you don't want to do the 3.5% annual increases up to the 20% when you have phase 2 come in, then we probably need to do a quick calculation to see, based on when you would want to do the next rate increase, what impact that has on the current needs.
We're talking about sewer only and not, fresh water, right?
We're talking water and sewer, so we applied it equally between the two. Now we could apply it unequally. It doesn't have to be the same increase in water and sewer, but considering it's combined fund, the easiest thing for the purposes of what we were doing was to equally apply so that we knew total revenues would go up by the same amount. But considering you have a lot more sewer customers, that's where most of the impact is coming from.
This question is for all the commissioners, that since the issue we're looking at, the reason we're having to do this is because of sewer. Do we want to look at just on the sewer? Would be a higher increase just on sewer? Want to look at water and do we want to look at what it would be and make a decision? I think let's look at the options for it. Yes, I think. Also, we have a lot less sewer customers than water. Right. It's not that. Well, I would add, sewer customers tend to be more just around the lake where you have higher value homes too. For whatever that's for, right? I would, John, on that, we can take a look at it, absolutely. But one thing I would add is remember that there are expenditures, $206,000 in particular for water interconnection. So there's expenses on both. It's not just sewer. I mean, I think in some way the sewer system affects everybody in this town. Yeah. Not just the ones that pay a sewer bill. Right. So we have to, think about that. And we think about, well, in the tax, whatever the tax rate is, we capture more of that, because I'm just telling you that sewer does not just affect the people that are hooked to it. I agree 100%. So we have to keep that in mind. Yeah.
And that 40% was arrived at assuming it was going to be applied to both water and wastewater in order to get the fund balance where it needs to be. Yeah. So it could be, if you got to raise substantially the water out.
Yeah, people say, I'm not on the sewer, it doesn't affect me. If that sewer goes bad, it affects them.
Also keep in mind that your sewer reaches up into Chicken Rock Village, right? It affects Rosen Hall. You don't have water in Rosen Hall. Although it's 1 point, it affects Rosen Hall.
Yeah, gotcha.
Now, according to the sheet item, the residential wastewater at the very top of the first page, CWS, Carolina Water Service, Fairfield Mountain, is listed, and their rate percentage at 101.13 is even with a 40% increase. Fairfield Mountain, that is Rosen Hall, correct? Right. Even with a 40% increase, Rosen Hall residents already pay a rate. How interesting. Yeah. They already pay a rate that's higher than 40% increase. Service population, 63,000, and that, well, CWS service is more than just Fairfield Mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So that's where that number is.
That's indicative of all Carolina.
All of it, yeah.
May I add, if you raise your rate, there's that rate of 101.13, all their systems? Kurt, do you know the answer to that?
No, what I say is not specific to Fairfield Mountain, but if you go down, there's another Carolina Water Service at Corolla, like in Monterey Shores, and it still has service population in that exact same number. That's because wherever they got this data from.
Okay.
But they're in all of Carolina Water.
All their customers.
Yeah. Any customer that has their station.
There's another one on down there with Rock, Bannertown Water Sewer District, right under that Carolina Water Service.
Yeah, so if we increase our rate, there's kind of have to look, because there's, essentially, there's two parties get paid on that one.
this, and just, for what it's worth, is, Currituck County, Moyoc, I looked that up, and it was, and they have several rates in that same service population area. This was, Moyoc Commons, I think, and it was, it looked to me, it appeared to be like a shopping center or a, planned urban development, something like that, is where they probably put in maybe even some of the cost of the, yeah, so that's a little bit of an outlier.
Well, if you look at Wolfenburg, I don't know where that's at, but sending customers to 235, there's no reason, no wonder their unit prices are way.
That's probably a beach community, would be my guess. So basically, we're gonna, you know, we may have to do it, but it's like we're gonna land on top when it comes to, lobbying efforts with the state. We need to make sure that apples to apples will be the highest in the state, and it ought to be helpful.
Seth, one other point that I'd like to make concerning the salary. This year is gonna be huge for us because we're restructuring who's doing the work anyway. Really, it's Buyers Environmental that does the lion's share of the labor down on that plant, and they're being paid as a contractor, but we're trying to gear up folks inside the house to take that over. At that point, we have to reassess and figure out what the portion of the salaries would be from town employees that go into it. So what we're doing with the salaries, I think the bigger picture is we're restructuring starting now, totally appropriate, but it will change even again. But hopefully it kind of at least be an even swap and maybe work in our favor, which would help with the cash flow problem in the water sewer system. So we get that. I appreciate your caution flag with the salaries.
To add to that, if we keep those three employees paid out hydro, and they basically assume or do these for wastewater treatment plant, and we still keep it hydro, that is one way that you are helping the water and sewer fund and paying for that totally out of hydro.
Will the audit allow that?
I prefer Sam, I don't know.
I'd love to ask.
Question for Kirk, then. Kirk, is there an advantage to biting the bullet and leaving these things kind of as they are to, when we go, ask, grants and so forth?
You mean not doing the rate?
No, increasing the rate.
Yes.
We talked about maybe trying to push somebody here and there, not maybe the high
Not
salary,
moving down.
salaries, something else. So as much as we could justify to, so that in essence, we're, not charging any more for water and sewer than we absolutely have to.
Yeah, right.
We're not shooting ourselves in the foot doing that all.
Yeah, good.
If you're using a contractor like we are now for wastewater treatment, does that, what we're paying them have to be figured in that percentage?
Okay, say that again.
So we're using contractors to manage the wastewater plants. So we're paying them on a contract. Does that have to be calculated into this, formula, the money that we're paying them?
So that should just be part of your expenditures in the fund, and that's automatically rolled into your rates.
Part of the total cost.
Yeah.
On table 3, is that on salary in that 5,700? Where does Don show up? Not contractual, he would be a contractual.
Yeah.
Where's the deadline?
I'll tell you.
Well, look at this sheet, is it on this sheet? Yeah, I'm looking,
Yeah, because this sheet is based on the expenditures in the budget.
yeah. It might be other, probably under other.
Sewer other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let
Right in the middle of the page.
sewer.
Right, so let me kind of explain, there's a little bit of confusion that I sense here. So we had 40% to achieve, really, what we need to do is achieve a $500,000 reserve going into the application with LGC in order for them to have confidence to give us a 12.5 million. 40% was a big pill to take. So the way to reduce the 40% is to take some of the expenditures which were either shared or not really, could go either way, either public works or in the water sewer, to put it into the broader tax base, into the general fund, so that we didn't have to do 40%. We could do 30% as Seth has laid out and achieve the 500K reserve and be in good shape to get the 12.5. So the reason why we did that was in order to reduce the amount that we would levy on a smaller population within Lake Lure, going to John Kilby's point, which is that's totally appropriate because we want to go there anyway, because the sewer system affects the entire community, and on the other end of this, we want to shift more, have more users on the system, and have more people pay into it. So in effect, by shifting those funds, we're able to go to 30% instead of 40% and absorb it in a broader tax base. To me, that's good news, because that's where we want to go anyway. But we have to be careful. We have to meet the rules to make sure we're not doing that. Now, moving other people, getting them certified and moving away from buyers, which is really twice as expensive as even hiring a FTE or a full-time equivalent. So that's in our favor too, and it's gonna help us later on. So where we are right now is, with more pressure on the general fund, which we'll address in a minute, we're able to go to 30%, and Seth has told us probably a little bit higher if we want to reduce the annual rate. But we're at 30 right now with the calculation to get us the 500K reserve to be in good shape. That's really where we are.
I think that's great. So the other thing I would add to, if there is a system, consider water, consider sewer, that you have the potential to grow user base in sewer. Because when your septic goes bad, and health department says you got to put all the sewer, that's what you got to do. Water, well going bad, is usually less likely than your septic going bad. So there's potential, I think, for multiple reasons to add users to the sewer system will help us in the future. That's a great one to invest in.
So the bottom line right now is 30% gets us down the road. All right, 30% ends up being about $90 a month. The other thing I would recommend is, right now we pay bi-monthly, which if we went from 130, just like the sewer rate right now, we go to 139 up to 198. That's a tough bill to pay for some folks in Lake Lure. We may want to consider going to a monthly bill just for budgeting. But it really goes from about $69.50 a month for the sewer rate up to around, with a 30%, up to around, I think it's 181. 181, so it's about $90 a month, or $90.50 a month. That's what we're looking at, really what we're looking at.
So Seth, if the board were to say, hey, let's go ahead and lock in 30% and adjust expenditures accordingly, or push out CIP to out years further away, what would we need to do to achieve 30%? Is it just salaries, or is it a combination of salaries and pushing the CIP phase 2 out to 2020, what did I say, 7?
Okay, so either pushing the CIP or doing the salaries gets you to 30%. If you do both, you get to 20%.
20% now or 20% in 2027?
20% now.
Oh, yeah. So we could leave the salaries the same and push out the CIP, and we're 30%.
You also get to 30%. That's correct.
Okay. And no issue with the LGC or anybody else if you were to do that.
One of the strategies that you might consider, because you're talking about concepts that you don't really know will happen, like pushing out the CIP thing, because you have national regional office. know that
Start.
you're predicating this, for example, on pushing out phase two to 2027, but that takes another agency to approve that. And so that may affect, 2022, 2023. When you go to this rate increase, you just want the residents to be fully informed. That's one of the things.
And think about that, if we're saying 30% increase takes us to 2027 before we start thinking about another rate increase, that sounds extremely reasonable to me.
So we're at 30% with no 3.5% annual increase?
No, the 30% would have the 3.5% annual still.
Yep, we've got 3.5% annual.
So we raise 30% now and 3.5% annual, both.
Yeah, any of the options we've talked about right now still include a 3.5% annual. To look at, we can have Steve, who's on the phone, essentially run the numbers and say, if you don't want to increase again until 2027, you know, we can run that pretty quickly while we're on the phone here and say what that impact is on the current rates.
But I can give you some anecdotal information from what I experienced in the town of Kendale. So before we did the wastewater treatment plant, back in 2011 timeframe, they were used to 80% of the revenue came from industry and 20% came from residents. That changed from the 90s into the 2000s, it flipped. So that was the first huge impact, is the fact that 20% of the revenue was only coming from their non-residential customers, and 80% now had to come from residents. That right there alone caused the rate increase. Now, they hadn't fully adjusted their rates to take that into account because they were dipping into capital reserves to keep that appear to be the same. So they were actually projected to go in debt. That was number one. This is facing a $9 million capital project. So number two, the $9 million capital project was going to result in about a $500,000 a year debt service. So it was a double whammy. And when we were going down that route, it looked like it was an impossible scenario. So we worked very carefully on projections like this 20 years out. We did all of the math like you see here, and not the current town manager, the previous town manager, Cameron McCark, and I worked on this, and Kathy Swofford, the finance director, and we came up with a 4-year rate increase. The total 4 years added all together was around 66% rate increase. So we didn't do it all at one time because it takes a while to design, to do the ER and EID, to do the design, to bid on a big plan. So the debt wasn't going to be due until many years down the road. So we started building every year. 1 year was like 14%. The next year was like 8%. We broke it up. Another year was 20% to get to the 66%. But then we said every year thereafter it was going to go up by CPI. And we put all that package together, which included the fact that after we get done with this huge step up, to adjust, we had to adjust from a projection that was going in debt, included that service, and lift that all the way up to where we're going to have a capital reserve, including the plan. So that took 4 years of heavy rate increases, and then on an ongoing basis, it'll be CPI for a while, and then to be determined. And the first 2 years was very difficult. I mean, it was very difficult to get through. The third year, no one complained. The fourth year, no one complained. And those automatic adjustments, no one said a word. That's just what happened anecdotally in Kendale.
So right now, we're talking about 30% increase and 3.5% increase each year, and that basically would put us in good standing and moving phase 2 out to 2027. That would put us in good standing with LTC and SRF.
Yeah, I recommend, it's going to take a cultural adjustment here in this community, but I agree with that typically now for our age and in asset management, you do need to have an automatic adjustment every year. And you need to go through that and educate your populace, because if you don't do that, then what you end up is stepping through. It's either going to be a level adjustment And, I recommend that go with the package of a huge rate increase that will be considered huge, 30% to this community. Include with that the education that we're gonna have, we got other things that we have to deal with here. So we're gonna have to continue to make adjustments on a going basis and go ahead and take the heat, as you mentioned, take the heat now to do all of that education to your residents. So that, and if next year, they may come again with that annual rate increase. You may have 2 or 3 years of tough discussions with, criticisms. But eventually, you make the cultural change. You'll make that shift.
Well, I think what's the thing understandable is if we explain well what the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 is. People need to be, we need to be real clear about what's not gonna be done in phase 1. But that's why I explained the 20% and the 3.5. If we don't do that, people are not gonna understand why that's gonna happen. I think once we explain that well, whether it's palatable or not, people are gonna understand.
And I think to add to that, later, would be that once we get through this EID with development, that we will have, certainly nailed down phase 1, we'll have a much better sense of phase 2 and phase 3. And then we can start preparing our team, like what's coming as far as the targets go, what we're trying to get.
Just to get somebody from the public properly, it might be useful when we're talking about this to talk about the fact that if we were to increase the number of users, okay, per sewer, that it could be that some of those annual increases might be able to mitigate it even in just a small amount. So that might encourage everybody to encourage their neighbors, like, who are not on sewer, right? Because when you give people hope, and they understand that, they truly do. So, but I don't think there's any other way to do this. I mean, we know how much, within reason, we are estimating how much money we're gonna need to do all this, and it's a huge amount, it's gotta be paid for. So, we might as well be open about what needs to be done.
I think that there should be, if it's possible to be open a dialogue with LGC now in an appropriate way, you should go ahead and start doing that. Show them what you're facing.
Face that.
Yes.
So I know the tax rates are higher than the budget ordinance. Is the same with water and sewer rates?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all of that.
In the water and sewer rates, we have to set those through the budget ordinance. Is that correct?
Yeah, typically the sewer rates are set with the budget every year.
Does it have to be?
Does it have to be? I think the answer is no, but I mean, it is important that whatever that you're setting for your budget, that it's accounting for the revenues that you're going to have. So whenever you think you would set the rate increase, that would kind of go into your overall annual budget planning process. But no, it does not have to happen at the exact same time. I mean, you could do it at the beginning of the calendar year if you want.
But it does allow you to get some effectiveness or concrete scale, so to speak, in the discussion. Because it's all time, talk about expenses and revenues. One time a year allows you to have a fuller discussion about all that.
Right. You can't really divorce revenues from the budget process. So you still have to discuss it even if you're not planning on doing it until a later point in the year. But I mean, you can always adjust if, expenses are changing differently, your revenues are not working the way you expect them to as well. So you do have that flexibility.
Is the board in general agreement that the 30% increase and 3.5% increase per year is something that we need, is one of the most parameters that we can pretty consistently follow?
And just for clarity, I want to make sure everybody understands that the subsequent phases are going to bring, 20% increases with them as well. So right now, the 30% will get us phase one and get everything in fiscal shape, and 3.5% will basically maintain that. The subsequent phases of the sewer project have, you know, substantial jumps of 20% during those years.
And hopefully, being able to add new customers back to help offset that, right?
That could, yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, while this is a 10-year plan, it changes realistically annually as you get real revenues, expenses, and your customer base is a huge part of that. So if you can find a way to grow the customer base, that obviously has substantial impacts on what the increases need to be going forward.
But I think I might add, as you engage Mr. Metcalf, we will be very helpful to him, if you know what I mean. To get him more ammunition, if you're doing all that you can do.
I want to let the board know, so this is not, you know, Steve, Matt, Laura, to begin working on paper where if we were to increase local fees, water sewer rates, or tax rates, she now is collecting information so that that document can be pulled together to explain to the public. We only make a section of it, depending on what you choose to do, but we're starting to gather information for why this needs to be done. So we'll only use what we actually do.
It was, just a little while that really summed it up where, you know, you're not having to read a lot. You know, you made a real good, tight, summary, and if we could find that would probably maybe be a good outline. But I remember that at the time, that was very well received. Consumable in one sitting. Consumable in one sitting, because somebody find it something like that. Yeah. And that was when we, made the bump for, capital improvements. On, one last question I have, when would the sewer, so I got a little confused, when would the water sewer rates go into effect, 1st of July this year? That's kind of important because you can start it at the beginning of that fiscal year, but a mill rate increase, no one will see that until August of 2021. So really, and mortgages would not be affected until after mortgages are adjudicated in their escrow after August of 2021. So in essence, the water sewer rate increase will be a year offset from the tax mill rate increase.
It'll go out, I think it's September.
Yeah. Right, to be paid by the end of December. Right? And then all the escrows get adjusted in really early 2022. I mean, so you're really talking about a real year gap between when somebody, in real terms, sees a water sewer increase, then the property tax potential increase. I just want to sort that out, which kind of is something to consider.
6 months. If we do July 1,
yeah,
rate increase, they'll see that.
Right away, this year.
But then they'll see the tax increase.
August of 21. Which means they won't start, and it won't come due until the end of December.
August 20. It'll be 6 months. Yeah.
Oh, this year? You'll see the mill rate increase this year?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
all right.
But really, it's 6 months.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah, that was what my question was.
I believe that July will go out. July will be read in September, that bill will go out in October.
Okay. Now, are we going to consider changing that to a monthly instead of like?
There's a cost, you can also bring costs to the other side. For frequent billing methods, will increase your costs.
Most of it is automatic.
I'm going to email, she's most of
I know, Michael, the statute told you to know that, you can do an automatic thing. Do you think we could, get the information out?
We've already
have been involved, yeah, we have been. We can figure that out. But I think it's important to do a month, just for people budgeting and doing month to month and shop list. Maybe.
Oh, shock mitigation.
Yeah.
Well, just, there are a lot of people who are, well, or need to pay their bills month by month.
Yeah.
And I know they should theoretically save up for 2 months and pay that bill, but maybe they don't. I just think it's better.
If you call that a shock, it's a bill, you just have to pay it. It's paper and a postage.
Yeah, that's how it is. But I mean, another thing to follow up though, the 30% increase gets us, down the list on the sorted list a little bit more. So it gives us a little bit of headroom on both the water and the sewer side, which gets us the benefit of both worlds. It gives us a little breathing room, a little less shock factor, but it also makes a point for those who would advocate for us with the state legislature to say, hey, we are doing our part. And with those that would loan us money, we're serious people here in Lake Lure, raising our rates. We're moving forward. And other things that we can do to mitigate that, I mean, the other thing about the 3.5%, look at it this way. 3.5%, having that in there could go either way. If we underestimate it, it softens the blow a little bit later on, but if we have mitigation that brings down the cost, we may avoid another big shock. So it really gives us two benefits. That's why we got to do the 3.5, in my view. You see what I'm saying with that? So, 59.7 or something like that last year. It's in that management budget. Okay. That's close enough. Yeah.
Yeah, 30% is $20 per month. Okay.
Yep.
28.5.
Yep.
I think we honed in on something, so that's big. Like a cherry tracker.
Dad, are you on the same page we are with this?
So if I'm following everything being discussed, it sounds like you're talking about doing the 30% now and the 3.5% as a general plan going forward after that. And then basically looking at where you are in total by the time you get to wherever phase 2 happens and kind of take that as it comes. It's probably a fairly substantial increase. I mean, looking at what we have now, but if you grow your base or other things happen in the interim that you can do, then, maybe it's not. But I do think the 30% is a solid move right now. It gives you some immediate benefit to your funds on hand, gets that in good shape, gets you in position to take on the new debt, hopefully get you in good position with LGC from a financial standpoint. And assuming you're planning on keeping those annual increases, then you should at least keep up, hopefully, with cost controls, with inflation and everything else. And then that gives you some time to figure out phase 2, maybe up to another 5 years or so to kind of figure out phase 2, how much it's going to be, what it's going to be, and where you're at financially.
Just to make sure, just for clarity, this 30% increase is predicated on, or the reduction from 40% to 30% is predicated on our being able to move those salaries to the general fund. Is that correct?
Or to move phase 2 out to 2027. As long as you can do either of those things, then you should be okay with the 30%.
One of those two things has to happen.
One of those things, 2 things has to happen. That's correct.
Oh, okay.
If you're able to do both of those things, then perhaps it helps then lessen any future increases if you're, successfully able to do both of those things.
Okay. All right, so I think that we have settled on a 30% increase and 3.5 per year. And that's all we're expecting on when the next 20% increase will be. We're not going to specify that one. So
And I would recommend to the board that the easiest, cleanest way to justify that is to move your phase two to 2027. We're in 2020 now, and we're gonna borrow $12.5 million, and we're gonna do some work. We should be able to ride that phase one for 7 years. We should get at least 7 years out of the 12.5. You would think we surely we get 7 years out of what we're gonna do. In other words, it lasts us for 7 years before we start phase two. I would hope.
So you're saying move that out?
Yes.
In lieu of moving that?
Keep salaries where they are and just move that out to 2027. And that allows us to 30% and a 3.5% per year. That's care of that.
So what then, let me ask you a question. So let's assume in 2 years, we get a big stimulus package or something. Wouldn't all this be adjusted? They, I'm hoping, that's what I'm hoping for, and all this stuff is, we're talking about something that's worst case scenario here. That it could get better under some circumstances.
If we did both, don't we could build up our reserve faster?
Yeah. You can keep it 30%, do it 3.5% per year, and, you can move both salaries and move it out to 2027 phase two, and you just build up your war chest much faster.
And I recommend that you just continue with a lobbyist, whether it's Metcalf or somebody else, constantly keep that going, because you've got other phases, you can't stop doing that.
So this isn't a one-time fix all. That's step.
Yeah, this is just one.
We pick the best step to get us on down the road, and when it's, instead of stimulus or something, then we can take another step.
And we can inform your constituents that you do have a lobbyist who is trying to position the town for any funding that would come up that you don't know about now. So you can take advantage of that so the constituents know that you are hunting. You're looking for other resources.
Yeah.
That will help you when you face the need.
Not to over-militarize the concepts, but the town is in a war when it comes to water. And we're trying to find tactics and arguments. It's a long-lasting thing that we're in. It's not going to be more than 5 years. It's a long, steady process that we've got to do, and we're ramping up to do that. It won't be 1 year or 2 years. It's going to require a cultural shift in the way we're thinking. This is what the town is in the middle of. It's got to be in the middle of the war, which is going to require a continual sustained effort to win.
I mean, the moving phase two out is a tool that we should keep in our back pocket. No decision needs to be made before it's time. And I would say that it's good that we know that we can do that. Do the salaries now, hold that in our back pocket, because you can leverage that with Metcalf and stuff. When we show LGC, hey, this is the progression. This is what we've got. This is what we have in front of us. Another 20% coming up. Use it to our advantage, and we can always pull that thing out of our back pocket when we need to. We don't need to do that right now, I would suggest.
I think Sam is confident that we can move the salary, which really went up to Chuck.
Yeah.
My only consternation is that Chuck's title is water supervisor. It's crystal clear, it's water supervisor. If there's a position that, LGC or auditor would say, no, that's kind of thing, enterprise money, it's going to be Chuck. We could keep half of his salary in water. And Linda has a building of work. And Linda does the utility building. That's
general. It's multidisciplinary.
Right. She also does the customer service. She does a lot of cold purchase.
Right.
LGC and our auditors is to move it to 2027. But if we want to move salaries, I'm okay with that too.
But there is a cost associated with moving salaries, right? I mean, there is a cost to the general fund,
Yeah.
so it's not as though there's no cost back. The pushing this out to 2027, there's no real cost associated with that. If I understood correctly, now, you may be not moving all of them, though, there was going to be an increase in the ad valorem tax rate in order to accommodate for moving those salaries from the sewer water fund into the general fund. So I think we need to factor that in, because that is requiring an increase in the tax rate based on doing that, in addition to the other increases in tax rate.
Right, but it's a broader tax rate.
It is for the impact to the public.
And it affects all the citizens right now, not just the sewer customers. Everybody's.
I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it at all. I'm saying that there is a cost to it, it's not just
No, you're right.
free to move it from one place to another, you don't pay it.
Well, let me ask this question with Chuck in the salaries. So does Chuck do anything with water?
Yeah, he's now the supervisor.
Well, I mean, what does he do? I mean, does he?
So he checks the monitors as well, he does the testing.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah, he doesn't do all of it.
Right. So you could timeshare that and keep it.
I would feel comfortable having salary.
Yeah.
I would feel comfortable. What about Luke? I would still spend all the general fund.
Yep.
Okay. So we could move 1.5 FTEs to general and retain 0.5 in water sewer. Does that sound reasonable? Is everyone agreeable with that? Or that's a change we can put on board? We can lock that in. Sam's not going to fly.
And fire is the whole thing.
He's going to stay. One more year. And we'll keep on going. And then about 125,000 right there.
Yeah. So that's a good line share. So I still say the 30% will probably get it there, though, and do something with it.
We'll do a 1.5 FTE for water sewer to general.
Okay.
And are we going to move out to 2027 or leave it where it is? Think do leave it where it is?
I say leave it if we can get by without doing it, but like Dave said, we got in the back pocket, we have to have it. Bert, you have an opinion?
I think, I'm deferring to Sam, and if Sam feels that it's appropriate, then I'm okay with that. As an engineer, I'm not going to, argue with Sam.
Sam, you pretty much said you think it's the way, right?
That's what I said. And that, moving into general fund seems to me, I'm thinking, as I'm sitting here hearing that, it's similar to repurposing the sewer drain valve to a dam valve, which can be funded by ad valorem, and helping lift the burden off of the enterprise fund, which has very few customers to generate.
Well, the current bill is 30% now anyway, there's no reason to move it out. The reason to move it out was we're only going to have to go to 20% right now. For you 30% anyway, why would you move it out? 2027.
Yes, we want to go. I think we're in violent agreement.
But we said all salaries had to shift in order for the 30% to cover. We're not doing all of it, we're doing 1 and 2.
Well, you could move, moving 2024 to 2027, probably, the numbers would probably show you to move 2025 or 2026, whatever. It's kind of a feasible.
Yeah, that's an administrative move.
So we can do that, Rich, make it work. Seth, did you get that?
I know it's kind of a combination of the two, that you're moving some of the salaries and then perhaps moving the project a year or two, some combination would probably get you to 30%. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
I think that's probably true.
That's exactly what the model is designed to do.
Yes, and I mean, we can make that change if we know what salaries to put in. We can confirm that and what year we want to show the project. I mean, we can confirm that. And the answer is yes, there is some combination that would work.
We're gonna give
That I
you a
can tell
number.
you.
We're gonna give you a final expenditures number with the FTEs moved, and then you can adjust the model to find out what year we would have to move phase two to.
And then, it's
Right.
just one more year.
Well, I would say it's a good thought, Madam Mayor, but we leave buyers alone right now because we don't know the outcome of that quite yet. We can readjust. It'll probably take a year to figure out what's gonna happen with that anyway.
Also,
But you're right,
right, it's not critical about this, obviously, but just pointing out to you, when you, for example, you have year 2024, and you're showing the debt services due on 2024, that means you actually started the process and the construction maybe a year before that, because your debt for that project doesn't become due until, it's so many months after you approve the project. After it's installed and the engineer signs off on it, there is a time frame. Then after that, the debt is due on that. So don't think that 2024, that's the year you start. That's the year you're actually paying the debt, which means you start a year before or something like that. You see what I'm saying?
So it would still be held to the same requirement of having a balance in the fund.
Yeah.
Is that the?
I didn't want you to think when you see the start sheet with that right here at the bottom, that doesn't mean when the project started. It started a year before.
So project starts, interim interest just accumulates until the project is finished.
Well, you are upfronting the design, you, take bids, typically as a standard project, submit the bids to LEC, that's when they approve the loan. You go to construction, and you are now authorized to access the money through LEC reimbursement, and you haven't paid any debt, but you're dipping into the funds and paying your contractors. When it's done, the DWI is gonna want to see your payment so many months after the project's done. Typically how it works. And correct me if I'm wrong, Seth.
Yeah, so the way it works for SRF is you don't accumulate any interest until the project is complete. So there's no interest accumulation until construction's complete and you're at least 6 months after. In this case, for this loan, you have no interest, so there's no interest anyway. And you'll just start repaying your loan 6 months to a year after construction's complete.
That's once a year for the principal, isn't it, or is that twice a year?
Yes, it's just once a year for the principal.
So theoretically, when you see a 2021 debt payment, that means you're actually starting sometime this year with construction.
We're ahead of the interest rate. Well, that's right.
Good. It seems like to me that another logical place to go now is if there's not huge consternations about calls for expenditure, and begin to try to ferret out part of the items that we need to add so that you can deploy your ad valorem rate balance. If no one has seen big expenditures or have issues with what's being spent, we had any ads with the last great budget workshop. The only thing that I would probably ask council to consider, and our town clerk is here, because she's ready to present her request. I didn't know it, but. Michelle,
that include, changes to, zoning?
And we could, we'll just reference that for your conversation.
We don't really have construction standards anyway, since the county does our, inspection, right?
We do, it's mostly for utilities.
Okay.
So it's like a mandate for the reds
Okay.
on a hybrid. That's not the thing. Well, we've already done that work, it's in a bound volume, it's been adopted, all we have to do is name it, when we do the recodification.
Mitchell, I remember there was discussion about, all the changes that were made, in Raleigh. Yeah, and so this takes care of that, what you're talking about, Michelle? Oh, existing.
So let me clarify. So everything that we have right now, they would do the work and create a database for us to access, pull it up, and we can basically create a link to our new website that Laura's going to be working on. And it makes it very clear as to how to access our ordinances online, very clear. All the same format.
Accessing ordinances,
Yes.
rather than getting our ordinances in line with the new requirements.
That's
So
right.
that's what we're doing.
Right, that's correct. So any new amendments, say that we come out with amendments work, we would give it to them, and they would just put it in, make sure that it fits their format, the program format. Yeah.
What kind of expense are we looking at, Mitchell, with getting us up to speed on the, new zoning requirements?
I'm currently going through the CEO training, with the school department, and I plan on sitting down with the department, make some amendments, and then send it to the training.
Okay, so that's something we'll do in-house.
I dive into it and become too much. But I think it's something that we can do in a lot of definition change, like a clarification, to my comments.
Okay, all right, I'm ready.
Deadline, all making the changes will be extended out to the end of July.
So that's not a real big effort, it's something that you may require some help with and may not.
Yeah, I believe that I should be able to, get that language together. Utilizing other jurisdictions. I think, yeah,
Couple of pioneer drinks the hours.
Plagiarism is legal in our.
Yeah, I know one, two sparkle, I'll copy from the best.
Why reinvent the wheel, right? So if that takes 10 months, could we split that through the fiscal year?
Yeah, we could. I mean, unless they got a billing issue, we could split that over 2 fiscal years, that's another strategy, we wouldn't start it until, say, 6 months into the new fiscal year, and split it between 2 fiscal years. That's possible. And that would not affect Mitchell's point, that work will be done. Our goal there is to get it compliant. That's everything. So really 2 separate projects. If you follow, Michelle, we'll pull the trigger on this new project until midway into 2024. For now.
As long as those are subtractions to the budget, we're good.
nosedive, because of COVID. Folks are being laid off, folks are losing their jobs, folks were furloughed, and we didn't do any of that. We kept everyone on the payroll, we kept everyone working, we kept, even the minimal type work. And the reason was, I held out earlier, we wanted to keep our workforce, together, on the wagon, and when we come out of this, we're ready to go to work, and we start to see that now. We didn't want to see anyone jump ship. We have other competitors in the area that can pull our talent away, and so, that's what we did. So we programmed 2.5, and the surrounding county would have city went greater than 1.5. Some of the 1.5s are not being phased in until January. So, as a manager, it's a tough call. There's 38 folks that work here. They do depend on the manager to be a voice during this time, and but I do feel like that because of jobs were retained, no one was laid off, we kept salaries. I certainly feel like that, 1.5 would actually be a decrease in the request, would be sufficient from my perspective. I guess that's like our managers sometimes make this call, but I think I probably would recommend a 1.5 at most. The other issue that I want to bring to your attention is that I really feel like that those who have to work a normal shift day in, day out, and we're having constant contact with folks in the community, may deserve maybe a one-time bonus. And if somehow we could balance the cycle, sometimes you have to cut, sometimes you have to deal. Without the money that we set aside for the 2.5, perhaps we could balance the cycle by basically reducing enough on the COLA so that we could give those in fire employees a one-time bonus for their work. Now, if you just want to say, look, you're asking for this money as a manager, you make the call and have to do that. But I want to share those thoughts with you about that 2.5, and I'm happy to take any recommendations or take your input on that issue.
So more information for us to consider. Most states right now, have eliminated COLA for state employees this year. Federal government does not anticipate a COLA increase for Medicare, anything. Well, the CPI has dropped because, most recently, but no COLA, at the federal level for this year. As an entering argument from us, I think we ought to start at the same place, which is no COLA, and start thinking about a amount of money for the town manager to have as a pool for targeted bonuses, rather than for those who came through during the COVID instead of a COLA. Now the COLA, Sam, what's the price tag on the COLA across all FTEs?
Yeah, it's right around 50,000.
50,000. So if we said no COLA, we add 50 to our budget, that's already in there. And if we give 25K, I'm just throwing it out there for a point of departure, 25K for bonuses, we would be a net increase of 25,000 on our budget.
Rent bonuses and all total, all in was 19 change. 25 we cover that. I looked at.
Oh, for the bonuses.
The bonuses.
Okay.
For fire.
Okay.
That would be doing bonuses for fire employees, right?
That would be just fire employees.
So
That's linked up with the COVID situation. Again, we found a way to keep everyone employed, keep everyone working, no one's salary increased, and we were very lenient about, I wouldn't say lenient about expectations, but we certainly placed some people on call, said, look, you stay at home, you be safe, keep your family safe, keep us safe, if we need you, you come. Everyone was willing to do that, everyone's been extremely appreciative for what we did for them during our situation. It could change this winter. We don't know if we get a resurgence of this, but I think certainly having the ability to give bonus to fire employees, those guys had to be here every day. And a one-time bonus, then if you're not paying
another benefit, you probably realize this, but I'll put it out there anyway. Remember that a COLA is a gift that keeps on giving. Okay, the COLA sets the benchmark for next year, all right, which means even more. A bonus is a gift that is given one time and you're done with it. So there's an additional advantage there. So I think the trade-off, more than in the situation that we're in right now with no COLA and 25,000 at the town manager's discretion. Now, we could pull in that authority and keep it with us to approve town manager recommendation either way, but I think that works in our favor, is understandable, given the situation, is reasonable, and it shows good faith to the community that not only are you sacrificing, or not only are we increasing your money, but we as a town have said we're not gonna make the situation worse, and we're playing our part.
I think that's a good suggestion.
So just like, are we talking about one-time bonus, having COVID, is that what you're saying?
First responders.
The other thing to keep in mind too is that we had David Field, he's completed the last, paying salary study, position salary study, he may have done it two times ago. He did a study, he asked me to come in and take a look at salaries, and he did, he said, you guys are keeping pace, with your labor shed, which is the folks that within commutable distance could drive here, if they have a skill set, non-skills, abilities to work for us, we work hire them. And also, we temper that with the resort communities, our cohorts that are out there, so he studies both. And so we get a good feel, keeping pace with the labor shed, yes, keeping, pace with our cohorts, yes. So, I feel good about where we are as a town and what we are paying for the folks that are here. Bad indicators, again, all forever, trying to hire somebody to move here to take that position. We can hardly throw that money at it. We're really about the range, but it tells you, it really is about the cost of living here. And so, but right now, I think we're in a good place as far as.
Whatever, I think we put it up there, we'll vote at the end.
How do you want to do it?
So it'd be no COLA, 25%, or 25,000, one-time COVID time.
And the only question is, do we want to approve as the town manager's recommendation, or do we want to give the town manager the authority to, at his discretion, to pay that 25,000 during the year? We can do it either way, right?
But that's where I don't understand.
Right.
If it's tied to their contributions during COVID, what is during the year? I mean,
You could adjust the bonus.
Shannon, I'll say up to 25, or Shannon is saying it's probably more like 19.
I guess my question is, when are you planning on them getting the bonuses? This year, right? This tax year or next? Or after
This year's budget, so it'll be this year.
July 1,
July 1.
is when this would be effective.
Right, I just.
So it needs to be put in for that.
Right, I'm just curious as to why you delay awarding it, if it were something that was a bonus for something that happened in this year, it would seem that you could put it in the budget.
Well, you can do a budget amendment now and get it and do it this fiscal year.
I mean, I see what I'm saying. Never mind.
No.
I'm saying, I don't understand why it's this discretionary thing on when you would get it, because if it's for the purpose of their performance for COVID, which was this
It's not a
year.
budgeted item now,
I understand that.
but we have to do a budget amendment.
Right.
I got it.
Well, let me explain. I think I can answer your question. So typically, in government, now, in government, typically, a manager has the tool to be able to, at the end of a performance evaluation, coming up, is to, in conjunction with that, here's my review of the performance evaluation, here's your bonus. We will enable him to do that. He's estimated about 19K. But to have 6K for anything that happens during the year, someone does something extraordinary, to do a spot bonus is a tool.
Not tied to COVID.
Not tied to COVID. Well,
That's why I asked it.
it could be, but
What
not
if it's tied to COVID, and
Right.
you said it was just tied to COVID? If it's not just tied to COVID, then that's understandable.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can take that language out.
But it's not tied to COVID.
Just say annual performance bonuses.
Shannon, do you want to just make it 19 instead of 25, let you discretion?
I'm gonna give everyone the same amount. I'm not gonna split the hairs, I'm not gonna get into a thing, if we ran more calls, I'm not. It's almost like the energy that it takes to try to differentiate for COVID, almost, just do more. I would rather say 19 and then split it among everyone that is running a normal shift in police and fire. And it can be done. If you wanna throw in the other 6 and let me have discretion over that, that's fine. I'm not necessarily asking for that, but I just wanna make sure that COVID folks who are here day in, day out, this is our way of appreciating them for assuming the risk of being here.
I think the 19 is fine, that takes the pressure off you. What I do is, I'm gonna give another 60.
Yeah.
I agree. Everybody satisfied with that? Madam Mayor, is that after your thing? And there's more.
Right, or do we want to just go 10:30, 12?
Take a 5-minute break.
I'm gonna be doing that. Yeah. Hey, did you get Jonathan?
Yeah, he's there, figure it out.
Okay, that'll work.